Okay, this is a short video on Chinese idioms. Um, they're called Chengyu in Chinese, Chengyu in Mandarin Pinyin. Um, and they're a really nice way into the Chinese language if you're new to it. And if if you're already studying Chinese, they're a nice way to demonstrate your understanding of the language and also of the culture, um, if you can weave these in. In terms of comparison, they're a little bit like Aesop's fables. So, for example, if you were to say somebody uh, really wanted something, they really wanted to win a prize, or they really wanted a job um, placement, and they didn't get it, and then they said, "Oh, I didn't want it anyway." They kind of say, I, I didn't want to win that prize, or I didn't want that job anyway." We say that is sour grapes, um, and that's a reference to an Aesop's fable. We have a lot of those in English, and a lot of them come from things like Aesop's fables, or maybe from Shakespeare or the Bible, that kind of thing. Okay, so in Chinese, these are called Chengyus, and they're also from a lot of classical texts. They can be from things like the philosophical texts of Confucius or Zhuangzi or Laozi, or Han Feizi, or that kind of thing, or they can be um, from history, famous examples in history. As we have, somebody meets their Waterloo, right? Somebody meets their sort of rival, and it proves to be their downfall. So anyway, we have, comparative things to this in English as well. Okay, so I'm going to move through these very quickly, and then you can look them up. And I'll also provide a couple links to some resources that might be useful, might be interesting to you if you're interested in following up on some of these. You'll find online lots and lots of um, uh, well, so some very, very good material, some fun material on sites like YouTube or wherever else that are going through a few Chengyus and that kind of thing. Some of them are just advertising language programs that you can pay for, and some are actually nice, really, really, really well done YouTube channels that'll help you learn Chinese. Okay, so this first one, Jing Ji Wa. This is the frog at the bottom of the well. And the story is a frog is sitting at the bottom of the well, seems to be very contented there, and along comes a tortoise who peeks his head over the top of the well that you see there in the picture. And the frog tells the tortoise how contented he is in his world, and the tortoise explains how spectacular and wonderful the great ocean is. And as the tortoise walks away, the frog realizes that he is a frog at the bottom of the well. That is, he is somebody who is somewhat myopic or short-sighted in the limited view that they have of the world. And maybe there's a level of ignorance there, maybe even a sort of confident ignorance, because remember, the frog is contented at the bottom of the well. And the frog realizes that he's been ignorant about the world and thinking that all there is his happy little well and this little circle that he can see of the world. So a frog at the bottom of the well is a way in Chinese of saying somebody has a limited view of the world, and maybe is somewhat contented in their ignorance. Okay, this one, I don't know if any of you have uh, kids or remember from your childhood the story, the Gruffalo, which I think was made into a short film. It's a kid's story, and it follows this exact story. I'm not sure if the authors actually are aware of that, or if they actively took this story. But anyway, it follows this very closely. Um, a tiger catches a fox, and he's about to eat him up for his lunch or his snack. And the fox says, "You better not do that, because I'm the boss around here. Didn't you know?" And the tiger kind of laughs and says, "Yeah, sure." And the fox says, "No, I can prove it to you. Watch. If we go for a walk through the forest, you'll see that all the animals flee when they see me." And they do that. And the fox walks with the tiger through the forest, and all the animals flee. And of course, they're fleeing the tiger. but the fox has duped the tiger and convinced the tiger that they're in fact fleeing from him. Um, and the tiger is sort of duly impressed and leaves the fox to live another day. This is a fun expression. I've given the source here, the Zhengguoce, the strategies of the warring states, or the record of the warring states. In this one, hu jia hu wei means the fox borrows the tiger's prestige. So you play a trick on your opponent to make yourself seem more formidable than you in fact are. All right, this one is from the legalist school, and it is a way that the legalists mocked the Confucians. And we'll learn more about this in our course. 刻舟求剑. In this story, a man takes a ferry across a river, and halfway across the river, he drops his sword in the middle of the river. And so in order to see where it is, he notches the boat, as you see in the picture there. And as soon as they get to the other side of the river, he hops out of the boat right where he notched it and looks for his sword. And of course, the ferryman is watching him, watching this dope think that that's where his sword is going to be. When of course the boat has continued to move, and so the place that he notched the boat is not where he dropped the sword anymore. This is a way that the legalists use, a way that the legalists criticize and even sort of mock the Confucians for using ancient traditions to guide their current their current behavior. So to Confucians, history and ritual is very, very important, and doing things as they were done in the golden age of the Duke of Zhou, the early Zhou dynasty, is something that the Confucians hold very dear. And the legalists, the rival philosophy school, the legalists mock them for this. Now, the next one is very similar in terms of the message here. 守株待兔 in this story. A farmer is out in his field and attending to his crops, and along comes a rabbit, and startled, and for some reason, the rabbit skittishly darts back and forth and crashes into a stump and breaks its own neck and dies. And this is great. This is a windfall for the farmer. He's got rabbit stew for dinner, and so he takes the rabbit home, and he and his family have rabbit stew for dinner. Now the next day he goes out and he sits by the stump waiting for another rabbit, and of course it's very, very rare for a nimble-footed rabbit to do this. Who knows what caused that first rabbit to crash into the stump? It's almost as rare, you'd say, as lightning striking. And so we say, you can't really wait for lightning to strike twice. You shouldn't expect it to. And so he sits there waiting for another rabbit. No more rabbits come. And in the meantime, his fields go, are not tended properly, and he doesn't bring in a crop, and so his fortunes fail. And this idea is impractically looking to a past precedent as if it's going to repeat itself. And again, this is another legalist critique of the Confucians. Okay, here's another one here. This one is a little bit Taoist, maybe a little bit Buddhist. 一人得道，鸡犬升天. When a man finds the Tao, or the way, even his dogs and chickens ascend to heaven. Now, this means, this could be read in a couple different ways. One is that somebody attains enlightenment or achieves the Tao in either a Taoist or a Buddhist term, and all the people around him, his enlightenment will radiate to all the people around him. And this was what some Buddhists would say to the Confucian criticism that they are just sort of self-indulgent in the way that monks leave their family behind and don't practice filial piety the way the Confucians say that they should. And they say, well, our contribution is that somebody achieves a level of spiritual or religious holiness and awareness through their enlightenment, and they're achieving the Tao. And in that way, they also can then become teachers, and their wisdom can radiate out to their community, even including the dogs and the chickens. The more satirical reading of this could also be of nepotism and corruption, graft, and that is that somebody gets a great gets a great some kind of official appointment or some great award, and all the people, all the people in that person's family and surrounding circle then show up at their door and and say, hey, I heard you just won the lottery, or you just got this great job, and um, are you going to share the wealth? Are you going to spread the wealth and share it with your cousins and family members and your dogs and your chickens? So there are sort of two readings to this one. This is a very simple one. 老马识途, 老马识途. The old horse knows the way. And in this one, a soldier becomes lost and jumps off his horse to try to find the trail of the people he's following. And in the time that he's doing that, the horse begins to walk in the direction that he knows he needs to go. And the soldier wisely follows the instincts of his horse. The old horse knows the way. Here's another very simple one. 入乡随俗. Enter a village, follow the customs. And here we see some people, following local customs. And just some sort of funny pictures here of American political and cultural figures. You are expected, when in Rome, to do as the Romans do. This is a very simple concept for us as well. Here's a fun one. 对牛弹琴. This is the story of a musician, a great musician, who believes that his music can be appreciated by all, and he takes his zither out into the pasture and he plays in front of the animals and the farm animals, and he's frustrated, very frustrated by the fact that the farm animals are not terribly interested in his music, maybe a little bit turned off by it. And so the musician is kind of crestfallen that his skills fail in front of the animals. And this is maybe a little bit similar to our expression pearls before swine, 对牛弹琴, to play the zither for a cow, pearls before swine. 和尚打伞无法无天. Like a monk holding an umbrella, no hair, no sky. This became famous because it was misread. I put Mao in there. It was misread by an American journalist named Edgar Snow, who was in China in the 1930s. And he met Mao before he was well known around the world, and certainly even before he was well known in China. But he was rising as the new leader of the Chinese Communist Party in the mid 1930s, 35, 36. And he said, I'm like a monk holding an umbrella, no hair, no sky. And Edgar Snow misread this. He thought he meant he thought he meant that he's a sort of a humble, poor monk, man of ascetic man, renunciate. But in fact, he was saying, I'm not really beholden to sort of pedestrian regulations and norms and laws. 和尚打伞无法无天. 无法 is it sounds like you may be saying no, with no hair, like the two fellows there under the umbrella, no hair and no sky. Another reading of it is that no law and no heaven apply to you. And scholars now believe that's what Mao was getting at when he was talking to Edgar Snow. So you're not accountable to anyone. Okay, here's a fun one. 自相矛盾. This is a story of a man who's out in the marketplace, saying, "Hey, come buy my weaponry, come buy my weapons and armor." And he says, holds up a spear, and he says, "Take a look at this spear. This spear will pierce any armor and any shield. It's the greatest spear ever made." And people sort of walk by, and then he calls even louder, and take a look at this shield, guaranteed to repel any and every sword or spear. And of course, then the fellow there in the picture in the blue says, "How is that possible now? You can't have a spear that will pierce every shield and a shield that will repel every spear." And of course, the salesman is exposed to be a self-contradictory snake oil salesman here. And so today, when you say 自相矛盾, it's a self-contradiction. Okay, here's a fun one too. 囊萤映学. This is a simple one. Read by the light from a bag of fireflies or the reflected light of snow. And this is the kind of bootstraps idea of a poor farmer boy who, in the sort of Horatio Alger mode, pulls himself up by his own bootstraps. And the meritocracy idea in Chinese history is very, very strong. Um, and as in the United States, it's a very useful fairy tale. It's a very useful mythology in terms of preserving certain kind of power structures, because the suggestion or the implication of being able to be a poor farm boy who learns to read and write after his day's chores are done by the light of the fireflies or the moon reflected off the snow. That idea implies that great talent will come through naturally through hard work and will be recognized, and even poor farm boys can become wealthy ministers and powerful figures within the government. And of course, that's occasionally true, but for the most part, in imperial China, even though there is an examination system that allows almost all male participants to try to take it and advance themselves politically, we do see that there is a kind of de facto gentry in play, in which the children of wealthy and powerful people have access to tutors and schooling, and therefore are able to reproduce their wealth even within a meritocratic system. And that applies, I think, to most societies as well, even in the midst of efforts to curtail that, efforts to curb the kind of reproduction of aristocratic or gentry wealth. But this is the Horatio Alger myth. This is the myth of someone who pulls himself up by his bootstraps here. Okay. Handan Xuebu, to learn the Handan way of walking. This one is about a man who wants to be really cool. And so he goes to Handan, and he goes to the city, the fashionable city where everybody is sort of the epitome of cool. And he goes there, and he notices that people walk a little bit differently. They have a sort of swish to their walk, and he thinks, well, that's really cool, and I'm going to try to do that. And so he tries to copy that way of walking, and you see in these images here somebody with a bit of a funny gait here, a bit of a funny step. And he never quite gets it. See, the ladies there are not too impressed. And even there's a goose, I think, in the lower image, kind of making fun of him. He doesn't quite get it. He doesn't quite get the cool way of walking, the Handan way of walking, Handan Xuebu. And he fails in his effort to be cool, and gives up and decides that he'll just go home. And when it comes time for him to go home, he forgets how he walked himself, and doesn't even remember his own way of walking. Of course, it's an absurd and extreme story, but in the end, he has to crawl home. So that's the joke of trying to be cool in a way that's not on your own terms. Is gonna lead in a bad direction. 世外桃源. This isn't really a Chengyu as much as it is a reference to Buddhist utopia, or even before the arrival of Buddhism from the West. This idea of a peach spring beyond this world is a sort of otherworldly utopia. And we have some of these examples in things like medieval literature as well, where somebody from maybe in Arthurian legends at King Arthur's court finds this sort of magical castle, and everything there is beautiful and perfect and wonderful, and he can stay there as long as he wants, and maybe doesn't grow old while he's there. And then he wants to leave, to tell his friends and family to come and visit. And the people there, the inhabitants of this sort of heavenly utopia, say, well, you can't leave, because if you leave, you can never come back. You can't bring anybody else here. If you want to stay, you can stay, but you can't go and come back. And the hero of the story doesn't believe this, and so leaves, tells all the villagers about it. Sometimes comes to the village like Rip Van Winkle, and everybody's aged except for him, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and says, come with me, I'll take you to this utopia, I'll take you to this magical place. And of course, it goes back to the place where he had seen this utopia, and it's not there anymore. So this is less of a Chengyu. There's no real story there beyond that sort of segment of a kind of Buddhist story. Okay. Ba Miao Zhu Zhang, this one's from the Mencius, pulling the crops to help them grow. This is one about impatience, sort of impatience of youth or impatience of ignorance. And in this one, a farmer is impatient to have his crops grow. And so every day he goes out and pulls the crops a little bit out of the ground, the sprouts, pulls the sprouts to help them grow. And he does this for a couple of days. And then one morning he goes out and the sun's a little bit stronger than usual. And of course, it burns all of his crops because he's pulled part of the roots out of the ground. And so this is a lesson about impatience and not trying to force nature to your own designs. Okay, here's another one about ignorance. A lot of these about ignorance. You say, plug one's ears while stealing a bell. This is not the brightest thief. This is sort of like the monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Yan er daoling, plug one's ears while stealing a bell. A thief is stealing a bell. These bells are maybe made of bronze or some other somewhat precious material, and so they're a good, easy thing to steal off of somebody's front porch here. And the thief is going to grab this bell. And of course, as he grabs it, it starts to ring, and he says, well, I better stop that noise. And so he plugs his own ears. Of course, the owner of the house hears it very clearly and comes out and gives him a beating and puts the bell back up. But this idea is again a little bit like the frog at the bottom of a well, to not be able to see beyond one's own nose. 才说曹操，曹操就到。Say Cao Cao's name, and he arrives. A little bit like speak of the devil. And here's a video game version of Cao Cao and a film version from the John Woo film Red Cliff, which is a fun, very long, fun film to watch. And here are some pictures of Cao Cao, who is a real historical figure. This is, speak of the devil. Say Cao Cao's name, and suddenly he's there. Yu Gong Yi Shan. This one, a foolish old man moves the mountains. This is a more recent image because this became a proverb that to celebrate effort, effort and a commitment to a very long-term goal. And in this one, Mao Zedong used this one to express his idea of voluntarism. If you are able to want something enough, then you can make it happen. Yu Gong, a foolish old man, Yi Shan, moves the mountain, and he had to move the mountain. It was an inconvenience to him. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was in his way. And so every day he would move a few pebbles or a few rocks and do his best to just move a little bit. And over the course of help from his family and from multiple generations, eventually the mountain indeed is moved. So this one isn't about foolishness, actually. This one is about effort and commitment to a long-term goal. When you ride a tiger, it's hard to dismount. We have this idea too, holding a wolf by the ears. I think Thomas Jefferson, was it, or someone talked about the difficulty of sort of the illusion of having something under control, but you realize that once you surrender any of that control, things are going to go very badly. 骑虎难下. When you ride a tiger, it's hard to dismount. That is, either you take on a dangerous task or you take on something that's very, very difficult and maybe beyond your abilities. It's difficult to stop. 按图索骥. Look for a horse based on the description. And this is a funny one that somebody describes a horse, all the great aspects of a horse. Its eyes bulge in a certain way. It has very, very strong back legs. It has strong lungs. And this description that one person gives to another person, actually to the other person's ears describes a bullfrog. And he pulls out a bullfrog and he says, oh, is this the horse you're talking about? Maybe a little bit like the blind men and the elephant parable here. which we actually have here. 盲人摸象, the blind man and the elephant. And in this one, you may have heard this one. There are several blind men walking along the road. I don't know if you know any blind people. I do. I don't think any blind people would make this mistake. The proverb, of course, is about ignorance, but maybe it should be better attributed to children. But the idea is that one of them feels the tusk of the elephant and says, "Oh, the elephant's just like a spear." One feels the tail and says, "Oh, it's just like rope." One feels the side of the elephant. It says it's like a wall, et cetera, et cetera. None of them really understand the totality of what the elephant is. And so just to have a narrow view, again, it's a little bit like our frog at the bottom of the well here. Okay. 画龙点睛, to draw a dragon and fill in the eyes. This one has a few different stories I've heard about, but basically the idea is that an artist draws a beautiful dragon on a palace wall, but he doesn't finish it. He doesn't draw the eyes, and everybody criticizes him and says, you have to draw the eyes. It's a beautiful picture, but you haven't finished it. And he says, I can, but if I do, you don't want me to draw the eyes. And they push him and push him and push him. And finally he says, okay, fine, I'll draw in the eyes. And he does, and he fills in the eyes. And at once the dragon comes to life and shatters the palace as it flies away. And this is sort of funny, just a funny myth, but it's based on the idea of adding the finishing touches to finish a job. Okay, this is a common one here in the West as well. Wang Yang, Bu Lao, mend the fold after the sheep is lost. The horse is out of the barn, toothpaste out of the tube, cat's out of the bag. We have very similar ones here. The sheep run out, and so the farmer mends the fence, but it's too late. The sheep are already gone. So to try to fix something too late after it's already passed. 水能载舟, 亦能覆舟. This one means something like the knife cuts both ways. The water can support a boat, but it also can sink a boat. And this one is a reference to the people, the ruler and the people. So the people are the water and the ruler is the boat. And the people may float the boat, may keep the boat afloat, but they also could capsize the boat. They also can sink the boat. So this idea is that the ruler does not have absolute control, even in an authoritarian system. And I think this applies to China today. A lot of people look at China as an authoritarian system with the understanding that for example, the leader of China can do anything that they want with no accountability whatsoever. And I think that even when you're talking about a Chinese emperor, that is not the case. And it's also not the case when you talk about Chinese the Chinese political system today. And here are a couple fun Chinese poems, if anybody's interested. 床前明月光，疑是地上霜。举头望明月，低头思故乡. In front of my bed, the moon shines brightly, seeming like there's frost on the ground. I raise my head and I gaze at the moon, and I bow my head and think of my hometown. This is a poet, Li Bai, from the Tang Dynasty, perhaps the greatest Chinese poet. This is a very simple poem, 静夜色, Night Thoughts, and it reminds us of the importance of home and hometown, and also that Chinese officials very often were required to travel very far from home to serve the empire, to serve the Chinese dynasties. This was a common thing. Chinese officials would be required to serve in a magistracy, in a county that's very far from their hometown, as a way of preventing corruption and graft and nepotism. And so that's probably the case in terms of where Li Bai is right now. And here's another one, sort of thinking of home, Wang Wei, his poem At Parting. I dismount from my horse and offer you wine. I ask where you are going, and why. You answer, I'm discontent, would rest at the foot of the southern mountain. So give me leave and ask me no questions. White clouds pass there without end. 下马饮君酒，问君何所之？君言不得意，归卧南山陲。但惧莫复闻， 白云无尽时. So these in 7th, 8th, 9th centuries are a period of a great period in Chinese poetry. And Wang Wei and Li Bai are two examples of this. Okay, so that's an introduction to the Chinese language through these poems, but mostly through these Chinese proverbs. I hope it was helpful, and I hope you got a little bit of a sense of the language and also the cultural values. And any one of these you can post about for extra credit. You can pull one of these out and talk about maybe how one of these Chengyus, one of these proverbs or idioms may be applied to your own experience in your own life or your own reading of literature or politics or anything like that. Up to 200, minimum of 200 words. And you can get up to 3 points for each one of these posts. Okay, thanks. I'll see you in the next video.